quick pause to say thank you to our amazing sponsor, Student RDH. Student RDH is a board prep company that helps you succeed and pass the national board exam, whether you are in the US or Canada. Student RDH has everything that you need to be successful on the board exam. There are over 5,000 practice questions, 2 mock exams, and a pre-assessment, a post-assessment. There's online videos. There's an incredible textbook. And there are even live sessions. So we have live case study sessions, and those help to get you ready for the case study section of the board exam, which if you're taking the MBD, that's 43% of the exam right there. So being successful on the cases is important, and Student RDH can help with that. I love Student RDH. I've actually worked for them as a faculty member for over 2 years, and the dedication behind the scenes for the students is what keeps me working with them and is what makes me happy to have them as a sponsor. Student RDH is also a huge supporter of the Dental Hygiene Basics Scholarship, so we want to give a huge thank you to Student RDH. Make sure you go follow them on socials at Student RDH and go check out their website when you're starting to shop for your board exams, studentrdh.com. All right, let's get into the episode. Hey, welcome, Andrew, to the Dental Hygiene Basics podcast. Today is exciting because we are actually recording live on the exhibition floor here at RDH Under One Roof. I'm very excited to be here with you because you are a podcasting legend, and I know I'm going to learn all the things here with you today, so I'm very excited. The first question I always ask is basically just tell me about your RDH origin story. Sure. How did you get involved? What made you interested in dental hygiene?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm really funny about this whole podcasting thing is we're going on 10 years this year. And I don't really do that many interviews. So I'm really happy to be here. Gosh, origin stories. Origin stories, I think generally, it kind of follows one of two paths, right? It's like, hey, this is the person that made the biggest splash in my life. And I had them as a hygienist and they're like, this is so great. You should do this as a career. We're saving lives over here, right? I never had that. So for mine, it was actually just a matter of practicality. My brother is also a dental hygienist. His name's Mike. He is almost 4 years older than me. And he said, you know what? I got a buddy whose dad's a periodontist. I want to be a periodontist. And so he did all the heavy lifting for what our career path looked like. And we also knew, I think, a couple of dentists and things like that. And so he was having conversations with them and they said, the best students from dental school were hygienists first. And so they said, you guys should go to hygiene school and do this thing, blah, 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 blah. Now, this is no offense to any dentists that are listening to this, but this is the kind of poor advice that dentists give sometimes to dental hygienists, not knowing what our profession really is. Because what ended up happening was, we were in Washington State and we went through our prereqs and then we did our 2 years at the hygiene program. We were in Washington. We can do, shots and fillings and things like that. And so it ended up just being one, super fulfilling right off the bat. And then two, time commitment wise, it's 4 years of life. Plus we did, school and on the summers and things like that to finish our prereqs, get another degree and all that. And then we had wives and kids by that time. And so now we're like, holy crap, this is actually a really great profession in and of itself. Why would we want to keep going on, incur literally millions of dollars in debts between the $400,000 to $500,000 of dental school, plus having to buy a practice for $1 million. Plus, hey, by the way, we want a house and homes are going to be, $300,000 to $400,000. So we're $1 million in debt after all of this. Or let's make 6 figures as a dental hygienist, not have any of the responsibility, go in, have fun with our patients, get them healthy, and be the partners with them that we want. And then we're done. And then we just go home, we clock out, we go home, and then we have our family, we have our kids, I can be a T-ball coach. Why wouldn't I want all of that? Why would I want a phone call at 3:30 in the morning on vacation from a patient? That sounds terrible. Anyways, it's just a matter of practicality, and it was really awesome.
No, I love that. I actually just interviewed another person and we talked about the freedom that comes along with being a clinical dental hygienist.
Yeah.
Yes, while you're in the op, you're managing your patients, you're being a provider, there is a level of stress there. But when you clock out, your job for the day is done.
Yeah.
And that is the beauty of it. And like you said, if you have a family, if you have these other obligations, things that you want to do outside of the field, you can do them. And I mean, we're sitting here together. You are heavily involved in all sorts of things, especially podcasting. So I would love to know the trajectory of your career, right? You get out, you're working clinically. How did you get to this point where you are today?
Yeah, that it's, first of all, you're a great podcaster. These are great questions.
Thank you.
And for listeners that are listening, she did offer to send me these questions ahead of time. And I politely said, no, thanks. Let's just do it off the cuff. Now I kind of wish I would have prepared for this one. So here's the thing, because sometimes you forget, I'm young in the career still. I feel like as a early 40-year-old person who also went to hygiene school late because I did a whole like lifestyle, like and other stuff like before school. I was in retail management, all that kind of stuff. And then I went to hygiene school. And so I had a different career first. But, I think the first thing was I started doing a lot of mission trips. So about 3 years out, I was just doing clinical hygiene, just like everyone else starts I'm doing. And then I was just like, I'm just feeling weirdly burnt out at 3 years and almost unfulfilled. And it wasn't like a monetary thing. I mean, I was making fine money and I did have those freedoms that we talk about in the profession, but I felt like I wanted to do more still. And I don't know that everyone necessarily has this drive, but I'm sure we all have it to some degree. And I was like, okay, you know what? Let's get travel. Let's go do something. Let's get out of my own little same routine every day. And so I Googled, what mission trips are out there. And I found a couple of groups. And then I also started joining some of the Facebook forums. So Dental Town was a big message board thing back in the day. Have you heard of Dental Town?
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
It's not as popular as it once was amongst like most hygienists, but it's pretty active. Well, they have a thing called Hygiene Town. And that's to this day, I have several really good friends from Hygiene Town. In fact, Trish is here, RDH Under One Roof. I saw her for first time since I think 2018 when it was here before. So it's like, you make these lasting friendships. Anyway, sorry, I'm digressing. So I started doing these mission trips and I was loving it. I was like, oh, this is great. This is great. But then I was like, I don't want to do more. And I tried to get involved in our national association at the state level and it just didn't work out. It wasn't something that they were interested in necessarily. And so I was like, you know what? I can still do more though. Like, how can I still put my efforts into making our profession better? And that is when I applied for, in Washington State, we have a dental hygiene examining committee. It is as close to the dental board as you can get. And we collaborate a lot with the dental board. We're asked for our expertise. The dental board in Washington State, especially at that time, was really nice and collaborative and stuff like that with we call it DHEC. And so I started doing that. And part of that was doing the regional exams and being the examiner for the regional exams and making rules for the dental hygienist in Washington State of what kind of exams we want. There's just so many really cool things. I'm like, okay, this is a nice little entryway. And at the same time, I was working at a DSO that was in the Pacific Northwest, and we had 50 offices. And I opted to take on extra shifts. I was working, honestly, probably 10-hour shifts, 50 to 70 hours a week, most weeks, because they allowed us to do overtime and we could travel all over the place. And so I would travel sometimes 14 hours round trip to pick up one 10-hour shift.
Wow.
It was awesome. But you get a different perspective when you do that. And you learn about new things that are out there and things I never even knew existed. And so when I was talking about how I was feeling burnt out, it really kind of helped me kind of kick that to the side, open my eyes that there is so many more things that we could be doing out there. And so then I started working at the DSO a little bit more. I got into some training positions, some leadership positions. I was like, hey, this is fun. I love being a resource because I thought I was a really good clinical hygienist. And I was like, how can I make other people's lives better? Because everyone comes out of school, they're all stressed and they're like, hey, we had 4 hours for a prophy and now we have to do it in 20 minutes. Like, how are we going to do this? And so I was pretty strict on the newbies at the beginning, just because they needed a little bit of strictness. Raising kids, it's like you're strict a little bit at the beginning and then you kind of open up and let them, fly. And so I really found a passion for teaching, training, helping hygienists. And then, gosh, career-wise, I've been involved in lots of different organizations at different leadership levels. And right now I am VP of Hygiene Operations at another DSO. And then I was Director of Hygiene Operations at another DSO. I had 50 offices, 75 hygienists. The pathway to that is you just got to open your eyes and just look through it. I guess that wasn't really a great answer for your beautiful question, but it's like, if you're feeling a certain way, you got to figure out the solutions. You can't just sit and stay. Yeah. That never works.
No, I agree 100%. And I really like what you said. You felt like you wanted something more. And I think we go through phases in our lives where we feel that calling, and some people never take the next step, right? Mm-hmm. Exploring things that are out there. I have what I call my career bucket list. And it's like anytime I hear someone doing something interesting that sparks a trigger in my brain, I just think about it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that someday. And I have routinely been marking things off my career bucket list. And one thing that's kind of interesting is that some things I realized I didn't want to do. You mentioned I thought maybe this would be interesting. And then I realized maybe that's not the path I need to go down.
Exactly.
But what you learn from that is, again, what you like, what you don't like. And then you start to learn more about yourself and what you're going to be good at, right?
Absolutely.
So for you, you're like, I really like education. And a lot of people, they may hear this and think, oh, I think education, I need to go work in a dental hygiene school. And it's like, there's so many ways to be a mentor and to be an educator and to make money doing that. as a dental hygienist.
Yeah.
Just, I think we're in such an amazing period of time where the opportunities are endless. I think that we have not even seen what we're going to see from hygienists in the future. So I really love that. The other thing that you mentioned is, you're relatively young in your
I
career.
think so.
You mentioned that you went back to school a little later. So tell me about that experience. Like, how old were you when you went to dental hygiene school? Just dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So I was practicing the Mormon religion for a really long time. And one of those things that men do at 19 is would go out on a mission. So that took me to the Philippines. I talk about the Philippines a lot on our podcast. I'll save your listeners the diatribe of how great the Philippines is, but it is awesome. And so I came back when I was 21. I had turned, 22, I think the next year. And I also got married that time. Well, that sets you back. Instead of going into school, do your perks at 18, now I'm, 3 to 5 years behind a lot of people. And then when I got back, I had to work. And then, I got married pretty quickly. I met my wife in end of January. First date was in February. We were married in August.
Wow.
And then, probably 15 months later or whatever is when we had our first kid and all this other stuff. So I had life I wanted to figure out first before I really was getting serious about school, even prereqs. One thing I forgot to actually mention too is so I did my prereqs and I was probably, 24 or however old I was when I was finished with it, got into hygiene school and started a little bit later. But even then, that didn't finish for me. I was still like eager for something. I actually went back and got my business degree too. So I got a bachelor's in business, and then got halfway through a master's program before I got promoted into something else. So I had to stop that. But like, I think that sometimes when we think that we're done with school, like especially like higher education or traditional, settings, you can't think that way. CE is good. CE is great. But sometimes like if you want to be able to pivot in your career, you need something else still to kind of be able to fall back on. For all your listeners, you just have to kind of just keep staying open to any mode of education, whether it's the structured kind or informal kind.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge proponent for education, obviously. Educator, it runs in my blood. And I think that is so important. And, the thing that you mentioned is you had this business background, before, and then you were working on your master's and all that. And it's like, life is really interesting where it takes us. But I always think that anything you gain along the way, it's going to be useful in your future, whether you realize it or not at the time. And I know for me, I got my master's in aging and dementia studies. But in my head, I was thinking, I know I want my master's because I know that the university that I plan to teach at has aging and dementia courses. And I had 2 grandparents living with dementia at the time, husband and wife married to each other. So it was very close to my heart. I knew that I wanted to do that. And I thought I was going to be out with a mobile unit working in nursing homes, things like that. And then teaching. That's kind of where I thought my life was going to lead me. And boy, did I ever see any of this coming? Absolutely not. But that's what the experiences are for.
Yeah.
And all of those skills end up, it's like adding to your resume that takes you to where you're supposed to be. So I love that. Okay. So when you decided you wanted to become a dental hygienist and you start on this process, where did you end up going to school at?
So I was in Washington State and I went to Yakima. It was a community college at the time, but now it's a bachelor's program.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
And then did you get in on your first try?
I did. But let me say this though. The reason why I think I got in the first try, one is anyone that's applying to the hygiene program, like there's a timeline, right? There's a deadline for this, there's a deadline for that. And then whenever you're looking at like a region, so I was in Washington State. I wanted to be in Washington State. I didn't care if it was 5 hours from where I was currently living or whatever. I would have moved, which I ended up doing, and that's fine. So I applied to lots of different areas. But what would happen is when I was completing my prereqs, I didn't have all of the right ones completed or all of them completed by the deadline. So I would have finished by the end of that spring term. However, not a lot of programs are willing to wait and like wait list you until you're done. So when I applied for Yakima, a couple things happened. So one, my brother was already accepted because he was ahead of me in those prereqs. And so I do think that there was a little bit of like, hey, we could have the brothers, right? So I think that was kind of cool because I did go to hygiene school with my brother and it was awesome. Which, by the way, we were never student partners together.
Really?
Can I tell you why? So our last name is Johnston. Andrew and Michael.
Okay.
And there was a Janelle Johnston, unrelated to us. That was in between.
Right between
Shout out to
you.
Janelle, my student partner for forever. But
that's hilarious.
Yeah, so we thought we'd be like, we just like work on each other all the time. It did not happen that way, which is probably actually better to some degree. Anyways, so I think there was a little bit of that, although to kind of indemnify the school, that didn't actually happen, but that's in my head. That's what happened. And then I think the other thing too is like They were one of the only ones that said, hey, we will conditionally accept you. So while my brother was finished with all the stuff and he got into other programs, I was only accepted into Yakima, even though I applied to several programs because they were the ones that would, conditionally accept me. And then, so you have to finish, I think I had microbiology was the last one, which was a tough course, but I had to get an A in it to maintain my GPA so that it would stay up. I think a lot of schools do this, but Yakima specifically would look at extracurriculars, right? So it's funny because so Phi Theta Kappa is one of the, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on that
Like
thing?
an honor roll, membership, right? Like if you have good grades.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's a group, and I applied to be president.
Wow.
Now, to be president, there's a vote, but no one really wants to be the president. And so it's and then all I did really for it was we had meetings, we had an advisor that really led it, right? We had advisors and we would bring speakers in and we would do all these things and I had to maintain a certain GPA and all that other stuff. Super easy. But you know what? That looked really darn good on my application, right? The other thing is I spoke a foreign language. And so they did a thing where you could go and take a third-party test and it would rate you, 0 fluency to 10 native speaker. And then they would give you point whatever points, not quite a full point for your fluency scale, and I got a 0.9 out of 1.0, so 9 out of 10 is what I got. So I did really, really well. I think that helped me kind of climb the ladder for because a lot of schools do the point system of just however many points you have, the most points you have, they're going to get in, right? And I think that helped me when other people were just monolinguistic, that I had the duality of that. So I think that there's extracurriculars that everyone should be looking at. Even if you don't think that you're really, really good at it, get 0.9 points, get 0.2 points, get 0.3, whatever you got to do. Do volunteer hours. That looks really, really good. Talk about hey, if you're able to submit an essay, be hey, I did all of this while working 2 jobs and I have a kid and I've done all this stuff. Because you want to demonstrate to the program that you're taking this seriously, but you can do heavy lifting. The hygiene program's not easy, right?
Yeah.
We know it's not easy and it shouldn't be easy. I'm constantly baffled by people who are surprised about how hard it is. Yeah. And I'm how did you not know? Did you not talk to anybody about how hard it was? Did you not read the curriculum and be hey, this isn't going to be your normal pre-req, you're taking 3 classes.
Yeah.
You're taking 8 classes every term and you have to find a way to juggle it. So I think if you can demonstrate to them that you can handle that workload ahead of time, you're more likely to get accepted as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what we focus on here. And, reverse engineering from going from an educator to thinking, how do I help students get in and succeed the first time around? So it's like you said, how do you not know, right? You have to have these conversations with people who are in school or have gone through school and just kind of learn those things going into it because it's a very rigorous program. So yeah, I agree 100%. And one thing you mentioned is you applied to a bunch of schools, maybe not 100% knowing about whether you would be conditionally accepted or whether it was okay if you had classes that were ongoing in that moment. And that's where reaching out to the programs, asking those questions. In your case, it worked out. You got into the school, you were conditionally accepted, but I had a similar situation. I had microbiology that I had to finish and they were sorry, we won't accept you because if it was not a science class, they probably would have accepted me, but because it was one science class, they wouldn't. So knowing those things is really helpful, but knowing that too, it's also well, you may not have to delay another year if one program will conditionally accept you if you don't have those classes finished. And that could save you on some timeline too if you're looking at certain schools.
Save me a whole year. I mean, this was what was I going to do in that year? Work for a little bit? I mean, you're right. I mean, that's important.
Yes, absolutely. So once you got into dental hygiene school, what do you feel was the most difficult aspect?
I think just not having dental background and not paying enough attention. Backing up just a little bit, one of the requirements to get into school is that you did observation hours. And I want to say it was 20 observation hours. And I did it, but I did it half-heartedly. I did it maybe shadowing someone who I think still to this day is a great person. And I'm very thankful that they took the chance on me, but wasn't the right kind of hygienist for me to really be shadowing. It may be the right system that should have been shadowing. I should have been working harder on finding perio specialty to shadow and observe, someone who loved the profession, that wanted to talk about nothing but, teeth and gums all day long and hear that in the background and not just see, because I did watch the mechanical portions of what they do. I didn't ask you any questions. That's also my fault. I didn't know what to ask the time either, but I didn't have a podcast like this to be hey, what should I ask? And so it's I never asked them about how they felt during certain parts of the procedure, what they expected the outcomes to be for certain patients. What was the procedure that they're doing that was different than what they had just done? Because to me, it all looked the same. All of this is a foreign language to me. I didn't know that. And so I'd actually have to look back to my transcripts. The story that I'm going to tell to the public that's going to be my truth for now until I look at my transcripts is my first couple of semesters, I was a little bit more on a rocky territory. You come from having stellar grades in your prereqs. You're, again, singularly focused on these 3 classes or 4 classes per term. And it was dental materials like glutaraldehyde, what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what any of these things are.
Yeah.
And I remember the first day in dental materials, it was like, we had a test the first day. And there was 20 materials laid out in like the different DAP dishes and stuff like that. And they're like, tell me what this is. And I'm like, I couldn't even create what this might even be for. What's bond? Hey, bond?
That's so funny.
Bond.
Yeah.
Simplest thing that
Yeah.
everyone knows in dentistry. I'm like, I don't know what that looks like.
James Bond? I don't know.
Exactly. And because it was just materials in DAP dishes, I couldn't fabricate names for these things. So etch is blue, right? And I'm like, why would they put blue stuff in someone's mouth? What is this exact? It's so bizarre. All the dental assistants, of course, got 20 out of 20. And then so I feel like that was kind of like where our like major like kind of mess up was, is like we didn't take it seriously to like learn dentistry ahead of time, ask the questions, watch. Well, again, YouTube wasn't necessarily, well, it was around, but it wasn't like it is today. I should have watched more of those videos. I should have asked better questions. And so I kind of failed myself in a way that I wasn't quite as engaged and as successful as I could have been for the first couple of years. And then my second year, I did much, much better. Passed all the boards first time and all that kind of stuff. So it did end up kind of coming around. And then things in my second year started clicking really quickly. And I knew what I knew and I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that's really with a lot of what I do, I consider it like a pipeline, right? It's like you get the podcast, you learn this basics of I'm applying, I want to get into school, how do I succeed in school? And then the next phase in the pipeline is how do you prepare from the day you get that acceptance letter to the day you get accepted? Because if you have no dental experience and you don't know what etch is, how can you fill in those gaps on the in-between? And I've created a little program for that specific reason. So if anyone's done dental hygiene basic training, you'll know what etch is when you go into dental hygiene.
We didn't have this when I was
something so small, but a lot of times it's hard. It's like, what do I look up? What is really important for that first day?
Absolutely.
And I felt the same way. And I had dental assisting experience going in, but I still, at some point the playing field levels and you all don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, at some point. So I think that's all great. Well, I would love to wrap up. Just know, what is the best advice you would give for maybe the former version of yourself?
Oh man. Yeah, gosh, there's too many valuable pearls, but it really, I think it goes back to just being open.
Yeah.
I think when we silo ourselves, when we stay within ourselves, when we don't look at what other opportunities are out there, when we don't consider other people's feelings or emotions or thoughts, when we're not collaborative, when we're not engaging, just be open to everything. And then once you do that, like things come your way. Our podcast, I Tell It to Hygienists, like, it was a side gig. It was for funsies for a really long time, and it turned into a very lucrative business. And it shouldn't have been, but we were open to the idea that it could have been, and so just, open yourself up, take leaps.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to be on the other side. Do it.
Yeah.
The profession of dental hygiene is, in a way, I know it's not probably for every single person, but I would say that by the masses, it's a safe, secure, and lucrative career.
Yeah.
Take chances. You're still going to be fine. You have something to fall back on.
Absolutely.
100% of the time. You're not going to overextend yourself as long as, you're an ethical person.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. That's exactly what I've done in my career. I see something I'm interested in, the opportunity arises, I say yes to it. Let's go forward, just see what happens and enjoy the moment, right? While it's happening. I think that's amazing. Well, Andrew, just share with our listeners where they can find you, where they can connect if they have questions, and that will wrap up our episode for the day.
Sure. The funny thing is, like, I am not on the social medias, even though I'm a podcaster and do all the things. But if you want to reach out to the podcast, Andrew at hygienist.com, you can email me. I love answering questions, especially for people that are, getting into the profession. I love helping, navigate that world also. If there's anything I can do for you, just let me know. But and then the podcast is, anywhere podcasts are listened to, Apple, Spotify, all of that kind of stuff. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate your time.